Good afternoon, and thank you for your availability and your time. As our first question, we would like to ask you, why did you choose this job? In which way?
I did not choose this job.
Okay.
Certainly not. I wanted to be a medieval historian. I make my studies in history really turned to the medieval time, 9th, 10th century, early medieval times. And after I did a PhD, also in very early medieval times, but some very important for me survivors asked me to help them in their work of remembrance. And it started like this. And after 6 years, my predecessor in the museum was Retreat. He was an old man, 70 years old. And those same survivors asked me to be the new director. And I was thinking during 3 long weeks how to refuse to them until I understood that it's impossible to refuse. I have to try to do that. And I tried since 15 years now.
Okay, I think it's an heavy job, so we thought to ask you how much do you feel the severe and tough presence of your job, and how do you live with the fact of being constantly in contact with pain and grief?
You know, yes, of course it's a job. It's not only a mission.
Yeah.
But I know how it is here in this beautiful city of Cherasco, but in Poland in November, we have the November rains. You know, it's cold, it's grey, it's awful. It's nobody wants to get out in the morning. When you wake up in November and you see the grey atmosphere outside with rain, you don't want to wake up from your bed. And I've got also this feeling, as everybody, I think, in the Northern Europe in November, until I started with Auschwitz. When I started with Auschwitz, since 15 years now, I never have any more this feeling. Let's say every day was a very interesting, a fascinating day of, you know, it's something so huge when you are working for something that has a sense. You know, I'm not working for example, for my boss be more rich than he is, like in some companies. I'm working for something that has a deep sense, and this is something that, it's a completely different situation.
Okay.
That's why I am able to be here during the weekend and not at home doing nothing, because it has a deep sense.
Okay.
So it's something like this. Of course, from time to time, it's very, very painful. It's not like this that after 15 years you are fully, let's say, yes, everything is banal and normal. No, it's certainly not like this. Even I think that with the time, from time to time, it's more and more difficult because you know more and more.
Okay.
But still. I will, if politicians don't want to change me, I will never change by myself. Yeah.
Thank you. So, what are the two messages that people should get?
Excuse me?
What are the two messages that people should get by visiting Auschwitz and Birkenau? For example, regarding the renovations of Auschwitz and therefore the actual and inevitable physical changing of that reality.
You know, it depends on people. There's never one same answer for everybody. You can make some answers that are for the great public, but there's so many different people who are coming to visit. If you are visiting, for example, and you are Jewish, or Poles, or a family of victims, you are visiting this site as, let's say, your own family cemeteries. It's something different. If you are coming from Germany, for example, it's a completely different type of visit. But if you are coming from, for example, Cambodia or Korea, Southern Korea, you know, your history was completely different. Your cultural aspect, you know, your religion, your remembrance is different. Fair Asia was a terrain of terrible genocides and wars and massacres. but you are coming to see what's happened in Europe. So it's also something different. But however, I think that my problem is that people are still coming too much in order to feel the pain about the past and not enough about their own possibility of contribution to the today world, their own responsibility. And this is, let's say, my main concern, let's say, in my job today. To a little bit, maybe only 10%, but change this. I would like that people, after a 4-hour visit, not go out only, with tears or with a sorrow, with deep sorrow in there, but with the volunteer to be strong and to try to change something in their own world. I don't know what is a world. It can be a very local one or a bigger one. Everybody has a different imagination of their own world. Not only because of the age, but because of the psychology, about the imagination, about the role that you play in the society. It depends. So I do not say to people, yes, you have to do that, and that, because I don't know from where they are coming. But I try just to push with my guides, with my educators, to try to push them to think a little bit about their own.
Okay, thank you. And one of our classmates said that after visiting Auschwitz he felt guilty. How can a feeling of guilt arise in someone who has committed nothing and that doesn't share roots with this community?
There are different reactions, and during years I learned to not judge the reactions, because for some people, especially some very sensitive people, it's something that can be traumatical. And the trauma, I'm not a psychologist, I can't judge a trauma, I don't want to judge trauma, but I remember there was one day a group of young students from Germany that were coming. And one boy, I don't know, he was 16 or 17 I think years old. After the visit, he said that he don't want to be German anymore. He destroyed his ID or his passport or his documents, and he refused to speak German, completely. Just after going out of the museum. This was a typical traumatical reactions that of course need to be worked with a psychologist, with some educators, with some help, maybe in family. I don't know his family, I don't know his history, I don't know what provoked a so huge, let's say, reaction. But there are very different reactions. So guilty or not guilty, this is also a feeling about the past. I'm not a God that will work with guilty or not guilty. I am more thinking about the future. For me, Auschwitz is not only a site of the past, but it is a site for the future. So for me, the question is not if somebody feels guilty, but if somebody has feel responsible for the future, not for the past.
Okay.
And I think it can be a very, very powerful reaction. You have some feelings that you apparently do not arrive to live with because, yes, you feel disturbed. But it can be a good way to work with those feelings, looking to the future and taking some advantage, some changes in your mind.
Okay. In the book, you say that truth must be revealed in the minimum number of words. What do you mean by that?
It's very personal, let's say. There are different way of communication. There are those kind of philosophers who need definitions. So they are fighting on the definitions at first. After that, fighting of using of those terminology, and after that, comparing the terms, and after they arrive to some logical, let's say, extensions. I was more growing in the perspective of a phenomenology. That means you don't need definitions to use terms. For example, if I told you about love. You don't need definition of love in order to know what I am speaking about. Huh? It's many things. It's not concerning only deep feelings. It concerns many other things. If you are speaking of the death, you are not obliged to define the death. Yeah, so I think that the more important to do not need long explanations. And if they need a long explanations, sometimes I doubt if it's really full through. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's a very personal idea.
Thank
I
you.
don't oblige anybody to be agree with me.
Okay, thank you.
Well, in the speech that you've delivered yesterday, you have explained that many people are connected to the memory, understood as a memory living in the survivor's life. So, in your opinion, do you believe that when the last survivor will be dead, the sensitivity gained throughout all these years might change due to the lack of living witnesses?
It depends on your us. On your us. You know, the survivors now are 95, 96, 100 years old. They did their job. They published, I don't know, hundreds of books. They registered thousands of hours of, I don't know, films or audio. Or, they did their job. You know, it's our. I feel that this fear of the disappearing of the last survivor is a fear of ourselves more than about the history of the future. It depends on us what we're doing with this situation. Already now I think that the survivors do not really participate in... I remember when I started, it was, 15 years ago, it's crazy, that the half of the groups who are coming, school groups, were accompanied by survivors. 5 years ago it disappears completely, because even if they are still alive, at 92 or 93 years, you will not be able to do the 5 or 6 kilometers of a visit. It's impossible. So it's already, let's say, in a sense, even there are still some of them alive, it's still something that belongs to the past. But the fear of what will be if they disappear, it's a fear of ourselves. Where would we be enough, let's say, mature or intelligent in order to continue by ourselves? So it's all in our hands.
Okay. Thank you. So, in your opinion, why are there deniers? What do you think of that?
I do not have any relation with deniers. I am focused on those who are honest. For me, the big names of the deniers, in general, the deniers is a history of the 80s, early 90s. Today there are still some, but it's not like in the 80s. In the 80s there were university with professors who are teaching the denying history. In Lyon, for example, in France, there was really professors who are teaching that it never happened. No. So now it's completely different, thanks of God. But there are still, of course, people, some extreme, I don't know, not neo-Nazi, because neo-Nazis are not denying. No, they are, let's say, approving. It's even worse, It's something completely different. But there are still people who but the biggest name of the deniers, like David Irving or some others, for me, they were a very well, at a time in their life, a very well educated historians. So I don't trust that they are really thinking that it's not the truth. Okay. I think they are trying to do some false publicity. They are trying to sell their books, something like this. It's. I know the knowledge about the source that they have. I think there's something completely non-honest in this perspective. But now, of course, this world of denying, it exists not so much in Europe. I saw still some denying groups or web pages in Australia, for example, or the United States. There is the big geography of the deniers in northern Africa and Middle East, but this is the Israeli question, of course. They are denying the Holocaust, thinking that the Holocaust was the myth of the foundation of the State of Israel. It's not really also a denying ideology, it's a way to combat the Israel, in fact. So it changed from generation to generation. It's not one whole, let's say, non-changing, let's say, position. It's dangerous. It gives some pains to the family of the victims, of course, but it's also dangerous for all of us because it makes the past less clear. And I think that a clear past, it's a clear experience, and it's a clear fundament for our way of thinking.
Okay.
Thank you. In conclusion, we'd like to ask you something about the future because
I am historian. I am not.
Yeah.
You have a museum of
yeah.
magic. I'm not a magician.
Yeah, but we'd like to ask in which way do you seek to raise awareness through the Auschwitz Museum of current issues concerning genocides and brutalities, for example, the ones in Myanmar and China?
In which way? Can you repeat?
In which way do you seek to raise awareness?
It's a terrible question because I would like really. And I am observing that this world sometimes is going in a completely different direction. So we are changing some of our methods. We are changing our communication. For example, 10 years ago we were not present really on Facebook or on Twitter, and now we have, I don't know, only on Twitter we have 1.3 million followers, you know. So we use many different new technologies, and we change. We have an evolution of our language, but I think that the world is evolving still more quickly than we are able to adapt our language. From time to time, I feel terribly alone with this question, and from time to time, I think that we are a lot of people in many different institutions observing the same problem and have the same question or idea. So from time to time we met in some conference, meeting or some to discuss the methodology, how to speak about the past in order to change the future. But it's every time I have the impressions reactive and not provocative. You know, we see some changes, so we react to them. We must go quicker. We must provoke the changes and not react to. It's still very, very difficult because also I have the right to speak in a sense, understand me, only in a sense, in the name of Auschwitz. I do not have a mandate of the victims of Auschwitz to speak in their name. So it's also from a moral point of view very difficult. There were 1.3 million maybe, or 1.1 million at least, completely different people with different ideas, with different positions. I have not really the right to speak in their name, but I think that if we think about Auschwitz or about the Shoah only in time of the past, that means it's maybe our knowledge, but not our experience. And this is the difference between knowledge and experience. If you want to meet somebody very intelligent, if you have the choice to meet somebody who has a very big knowledge or somebody who is very experienced, who would you prefer? It's very clear now. So we have to build, we have to work this history in terms of common experience and not only in common knowledge. Because for knowledge you have encyclopedia. You don't need to meet people who have the knowledge. You can read encyclopedia. For me, experience is maybe one of the key words in order to rethink the history. And of course, today, 3 years ago it was the Rohingya, now it is the Uyghurs. Who knows what will be in 3 years? So we have to be ready to, one more time, not react after, because it's too late, but to provoke and to act during. Yeah.
Okay.
This is my beloved goal that I will maybe in 10% I'll be arrived to do in our societies. I don't know. It's important to have some dreams, no?
Thank you.
No, thank you. Really.